everybody, we got a great one today, for a change, and that's because we're running one of our best ofs, my conversation with my friend, the multi-talented Martin Short, star of television, movies, and the theater. Emmy and Tony Award winner, singer, dancer, comedian. The man is the total entertainer. We talked to Marty, and by that I mean I talked to Marty, I guess, a couple years ago during the second season of Only Murders in the Building, which is just starting its fourth season, and he has been nominated for the Emmy for that a couple times. It's a wonderful conversation spanning 50 years of a brilliant career. So we're taking the week off to run this one, but Labor Day does normally signify the beginning of the fall campaign, and I have to tell you, I'm nervous. It's very close. I keep telling myself that a lot of Americans have grown tired of Trump's act. Even Trump in the last several weeks seems has grown tired of his act. But it's within the margin of error, and Harris has to win by at least 3 points to win in the Electoral College. And of course, the debate is coming up on September 10th. The prosecutor versus the defendant, I guess. I hope this time the moderators will call out factual errors. In the first debate, for example, Trump said that they, meaning Democrats, the problem they have is they're radical because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth. So hopefully ABC will be fact-checking live. And after the debate, we all have our jobs to do, so that means signing up to volunteer. You can make phone calls. You can even volunteer to go to a battleground state and door knock, or donate to the Harris-Walz campaign, or to down-ballot races. It all makes a difference. I can tell you I won my first Senate race by 312 votes. In the meantime, sit back, relax, and listen to my conversation with the complete entertainer, Martin Short. It's a great one, for a change. You've been in show business long enough to know you can't eat while we're doing this, right?
No, I just learned that in 2 days. I was having a submarine sandwich, and I was doing a PSA for healthcare.
Well, thanks for doing this.
Anything for you.
Well, that's very nice of you to say. Very nice of you to say. So I think you're the most entertaining person in show business.
Well, thank you.
And I meant that as all as a compliment. I mean,
no, I understand. How could I interpret that as an insult?
Okay, and you do it all: singing, comedy, do these amazing impressions. You do these characters, the Jiminy Glicks, the Nathan Thurm, by the way, is I think maybe my favorite. The Ed Grimleys, you do everything. You're just the complete entertainer. Except you really can't do drama, right? I mean, you've tried, haven't you? And
you've seen my work, then.
Yes.
No, that's absolutely not true. I'll have you know I was nominated for an Emmy.
For a drama?
For a little series I like to call Damages.
That was the name of the limited series?
That was the limited series starring Glenn Close.
Oh, my God. I didn't see that. So you can do that, too. Well, there it is.
See what I'm saying?
The insult didn't land.
And it kind of lackluster initially anyway.
Thank you. Speaking of insulting people as a humorous leitmotif, I want to talk about Jiminy Glick and the origins of Jiminy Glick. And I think I've heard you say that you were on a junket. And junket meaning you're on a press tour for something, and you're always getting, obviously, local critics.
Yes, that's true. And no, it was always, Jiminy Glick was an amalgamation of a lot of things. There was a guy that I had when I was doing a television show. He was in, some sort of production. I never really knew what he would, but he had a laugh that I would hear down the hallway. Ha 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 ha! Well, someday I have to make
Someday.
character have that laugh. So that's,
And Jiminy also has the very high and the very low.
The very high, very low was a neighbor I had growing up who had, if you stayed off his lawn for the year, you were allowed to go to his movie theater, which he ran. It was up and down.
So that's two of the pieces of it. But to me, it is what I love about Jiminy is that he is starts as a fan in the interview, and then very quickly moves to some very insulting. And just keeps doing that, right?
Under the guise of, I don't mean this negatively. So it was weird with Jiminy because certain characters, like Nathan Thurm, I would really write and memorize. It was exact rhythms,
Nathan Thurm is, for people who don't remember Nathan, is this completely paranoid kind of spokesman for things, right?
Well, he really did become... like Kellyanne Conway or those people where, they're cornered by logic. They immediately deny what they've just said. And when really cornered, they attack the person. So if Chris Guest was interviewing me as Nathan Thurm on SNL when I was a cast member, eventually I'd say, yeah, well, of course I know that, but I'm confused because you're so boring and you're so very bland facially.
Yeah, it was a lot of like, why don't you think I know that?
Yes, I know. But it was very much like some of those Stephen Miller types,
And I love the cigarette ash.
The trick was putting a wire in your cigarette so that would keep the ash on. The little trick.
Everyone should go to YouTube and find a Nathan Thurm.
Okay.
Because to me, it's, I think the first one might have been the tobacco guy, right?
That's correct.
We appreciate your willingness to talk with us tonight.
What do you mean by that?
Well, simply that we want to thank you for taking time out from your schedule.
Why wouldn't I be able to take time out from my schedule? So interesting that you think I wouldn't be able to take time out from my schedule, as if the tobacco industry's case was so weak that defending it took up all my time. It's so funny that you would think that. It's so funny.
Well, Mr. Thurm.
So, Jiminy, if let's say Jiminy were interviewing you,
right?
Where would he go after you? Where would? Because you don't write these.
Like, but he'd say, you have tremendous appeal, and this is while at the same time pushing too hard. Now, my favorite Jiminy line, I must admit, was to Mel Brooks when I said, "What's your big beef with the Nazis?" And Mel said, "Oh, I don't know, they're rude."
That's right.
Yeah.
What's your big beef with the Nazis?
What's my big beef?
Yes, it seems like you're always
What's
knocking.
my big beef?
Everything you're always knocking the Nazis. Oh, it's time for Mel Brooks to knock the Nazis, it seems.
Oh, I don't know. I think they're rude.
I guess.
That was partly your experience being on junkets and being interviewed by these guys, right?
Right, yeah. But also I was doing a talk show for a year for King World in daytime in 1999, 2000. And I also was just looking for a way to get more celebrities on the show. So I created one of these reporters who would do junkets. And then I would go and interview Tom Hanks on the set or Alec Baldwin. It became that thing.
Ed Grimley, you came up with, I know it was an SCTV character, right?
The first time I did Ed Grimley was on Second City Stage in Toronto in 1977.
Okay, well, let's talk about Toronto.
Yeah.
There are some people from Toronto who are still in comedy that you knew at the time, and the Godspell cast is legendary. What's that, 1972?
That was 1972, the spring. And that was, Gilda Radner and Eugene Levy and Andrea Martin and Paul Schaefer, Victor Garber.
That's amazing. Now, Godspell was a comedy?
Yeah, it was a musical comedy and it was based on the book of St. Matthew, and the vignettes and the parables would be as funny as the people doing them.
Have you seen a production of Godspell that had like a not funny cast? Have you seen that?
Well, I mean, I haven't
curious
seen.
enough?
I mean, I've seen cast. They're all the casts are kind of because they sing and they dance. I'm always amazed when I see anything on Broadway or off Broadway. I can't believe the amount of talent on that stage, even if the show doesn't work. But no, I'm just saying that look, you had Gilda doing Lily Tomlin, and it was a particularly strong comedic show. That production.
Gilda was one of the original SNL players.
Of course.
Eugene, of course, SCTV. Paul Schaefer. Now, do you do Paul's laugh? So you had Paul and Aykroyd was up in Toronto then, right?
Yes. When I first met Danny, I have a slight Rain Man thing for names and dates. I met Danny June 28th, 1972, at Gilda Radner's birthday party. And Danny and his then comedy partner, Valerie Bromfield, were playing Gilda's parents from Detroit. And they never broke character.
Okay.
And I thought I'd never met anyone like that. And then I went out with Gilda, and I remember one time driving Danny and Valerie in the back seat, and I was driving Gilda's white Volvo. And I was deliberately getting lost because I'd never heard people funnier. I didn't want the ride to end.
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing group of people all in one place. And of course, some of them, Eugene and you, went on to do SCTV. Andrea Martin, freaking hilarious.
Yeah. Did I not mention Andrea Martin? Oh, my dear God, I'll be killed. Andrea's my sister-in-law.
She is married to...
She was married to my wife's brother. So I am the uncle to her children, for example.
Oh, so nice. She's amazingly hilarious. Boy, oh boy. And the SCTV cast included other brilliant... I mean, just an amazing amount.
And Dave Thomas.
Harold Ramis.
Harold Ramis, yes. Catherine O'Hara.
Catherine O'Hara.
How about Catherine O'Hara?
Who am I? And I think I'm still
Flaherty,
forgetting.
Of course.
Flaherty.
Yeah.
Fucking hilarious, Flaherty. Count Floyd, right?
Count Floyd.
And then you did those on a shoestring.
Well, I mean, by the time there were different variations of SCTV. I mean, it started in 1976 on a real shoestring. But by the time I joined it, which was 1982, it had now already won Emmys. It was a 90-minute form. It was NBC. So we had a good budget.
I heard that they can't repeat some of the early shows anywhere because they stole the music. You had no budget, so you illegally used music.
Absolutely.
So there's treasures there that...
Well, we had to go in and remix them, I think. Do that 5-change note thing. I was doing Jerry Lewis live at the Champs-Élysées. And I'm singing, walk on, with hope in your heart. But then when we released it on DVD, I had to go back in and go, walk on, with hope in your heart. So we don't get sued.
That's so...
loop it, yeah.
Okay, so those are... Now, you do impressions and some of the great impressions. The Betty Davis, famously, there's on YouTube a thing of you doing it to Betty Davis.
That was insane.
That was hilarious.
That was insane.
Who haven't we covered? You working on anything? Anybody?
Let's see.
Do you do me?
Do I do you?
Yes.
Well, I mean, you aren't that easy to do.
Then we'll skip it. I just wanted to know.
Yeah, okay.
Now, what's so great about that clip is, and I have no idea why suddenly that clip about a year ago became like, you looked at it, it had 6 million views or something.
Yes.
But I think that Johnny's face and reaction to all that is just hysterical.
Oh, that's why he was Johnny.
Yeah.
Let's go to the singing. You just did Lewis. You loved singing. And,
Yes,
and
I did.
if I'm not wrong, didn't you want to be a singer more than anything?
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely. I have an album that I made at 15, actually probably 14. And it's Martin Short sings of songs and loves a go.
Wow.
And what I'd done is I'd taken a Frank Sinatra album, September of My Years. And so I would, with my tape recorder, would go, no, 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 no. You hear click. One day you turn around, and I would sing the song a cappella, but I'd have to be in Frank's keys. He was 50, I was 14, And then I did that whole album. I worked on it in a kind of an echoey part of my attic bedroom, so it had, the voice sounded better.
You kind of knew show business was your goal early.
No, I never thought it was a goal. I thought it was like a hobby. I was in Hamilton, Ontario. I wasn't in New York, so it seemed, if I saw an ad for Disneyland, it looked like I was seeing something on Neptune. I never thought, it never seemed like a realistic choice. So that's why I went into medicine.
That's really interesting because I did a podcast with Odenkirk. He said the same thing.
Yeah.
And he was starting to write comedy like when he was in 5th grade. Right? He was like writing stuff. But he, for the life of him, did not think anyone goes into show business. Right.
No,
and the same with me. I mean, in Minnesota, I'm
right.
doing comedy in school. This is something I tell everybody who says, how do I get started in comedy? I tell parents to tell their kids, every school has a stage and they want you. When you're in school, all the adults want you to go on the stage. And after you leave school, no one wants you to get on a stage. Okay. So you went into pre-med. You didn't think I'm going to do this, but then you did.
Yeah. I mean, I found myself after 2 years of pre-meds, I was so aware that I was just drawn toward the idea of being a doctor. I was a fan of Richard Chamberlain's work on Dr. Kildare. So I then switched to social work, which allowed me now to do, for the first time, theater and productions and stuff like that at my university and still do the schooling. Because when you're in medicine, you have no time other than
sure. Pre-med is organic chemistry.
Right.
All that.
Then after 4 years of university, I was going to do a master's in social work. And I was encouraged by Eugene Levy to take a year off and try to come to Toronto, which was 40 miles away, and try to be an actor. Because he said, I think you're talented, and I think, you should try it. You should give it a shot. And so I thought, I didn't want to look in the mirror at 50 and say, why didn't you try that? And I wanted to go, oh, yeah, I remember you did try that, and no one hired you. So I gave myself a year contract.
And that's when Godspell happened?
Yeah, I got Godspell when I was still in university. It was right away. So then I would renew my contract from year to year. And then finally, I just knew I was stuck.
Renew your contract? To
myself. In other words, I didn't want to be 28 and really broke with no direction. I just, and I knew that.
And that's what you thought showbiz was
Well, I thought the odds were, the odds are kind of against you. It's not like, my son Henry graduated from Notre Dame business, and 98% of graduates are placed in major jobs after that.
Right.
That's not true if you graduate from Juilliard.
Sure. Dana Carvey once said to me, there's no reason to be a comedian unless you have to be a comedian.
But I don't think I had to be, truthfully. I think I just really had fun doing it and got work. So it allowed me to have more fun.
Okay. Well, there's that then. Okay, you fall in with this group and of genius comedians.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what I wanted to go back to. I wanted to go back to your musical taste. So I'm the same age. That's where I was going. To me, it was the Beatles. I'm like a normal person our age.
Yeah.
And you were Sinatra and Tony Bennett.
Yeah.
And
also the Beatles. I love the Beatles. But I was learning to sing from Sinatra and Tony Bennett. Mm-hmm. I've had this conversation with Harry Connick where we were both obviously different generations, but he was 15 at one point and I was 15 at one point, and we're listening to Sinatra hold a note in Old Man River. Gets a little drunk and you lands in jail. I its weary breath. And so I learned how to sing from listening to that stuff. And placement with Tony, up in the
Tony Bennett.
Yeah.
Did you think I'm going to be a singer in show business rather than?
Well, again, I think I never thought I was going to be in show business. I had a fictitious television show in my attic where I'd have guests, but I never took it seriously like Odenkirk. And then suddenly my first job was a musical, so I was singing every night.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Tell us about the fictitious musical then. When you're 15,
television show, I had a deal with NBC. 15. But I was like Mondays at 8 p.m., but every other Monday because it allowed me time for my fictitious film career. But in other words, I was so big that I could kind of call my own schedule. And I would have guests, and it was all done through my reel-to-reel. And then I would type things up for TV Guide highlights. And then I'd a medley of songs that weren't nominated, and someone would go dinner, and then I'd pause it.
And you're still asserting that you didn't have to go in the show. That you didn't. Okay. Okay. That's
well,
really
maybe I should rethink my theories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've watched you and Steve do your show.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, part of the reason we're timing it this way is that Only Murders in the Building is premiering.
Yes.
Love the show. Watched every episode.
Thank you.
Season 2 is beginning. You've been working with Steve since, was Three Amigos first time you worked with him?
Yes, I met Steve back to the Rain Man thing, July 13th, 1985. And I know that because I have little tricks of knowing that. And when the trick was that I remember I had done a Dave Letterman appearance. I had finished my year on SNL with Dick Ebersol, and I'd done a Letterman appearance, and then I went to Lorne Michaels' apartment to discuss this Western. And I was flying to LA the next day.
Discuss a Western that he was pitching to you.
Yeah, well, they were interested in me which was Three Amigos. And so as a third amigo. And then the next day I flew to LA, and then I went to Steve's house and met him and picked up a script. My joke, we talk about this in our show, and I say, I saw all his works of art, and I said, how did you get this rich? Because I've seen your work. And he said, here's a script for Three Amigos, and wherever you see Rick Moranis' name, just cross it out.
Oh, okay, good. And that's sort of the relationship you have on stage.
Yeah, and that's so then we made that movie, and when you make movies, it's very interesting because you might be in Yugoslavia for 3 months or something, and then you never see those people again. And Steve and I think, and Chevy all made a determination that we wouldn't let that happen. And then Steve and I did many films together.
Frank. Where did Frank from?
That was the creation of the Charles Shire and Nancy Myers. They wrote it. I mean,
yes. This is of course the Father of the Bride, and Frank is the wedding planner.
That's right.
Did they say what his accent was?
No. I played around with that, and I remember they were the first day we shot. They were a little nervous about it because. So it was a studio because it was a sincere movie and this was a heightened character. My premise was always, hey, go and pick up your shirts. There's a guy working there that's bigger than Frank, and he's not trying to make a movie. He's just living. Characters exist in our life, As long as it doesn't look like I'm trying to be funny, we'll be fine. But we would do many takes where his accent would not like the law. And then it would turn it down and turn it down and turn it down. And I remember at one point, Steve said, well, I don't get the joke. Now I understand him perfectly. So we'd turn it up again, to find what that level was. So they did it, though, and edited it together to create the character.
So there's some over-the-top stuff there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that's what actors should do when they're making, give this range of, and then the choice will be obvious in the middle.
There was a line of yours that I used to bond with some of my colleagues in the Senate, some of the older ones. There's a senator's bathroom off the Senate floor, and the line I would use when standing at a urinal next to a colleague of mine, is the only time I don't have to pee is when I'm peeing. And man, oh man, that always got a laugh. And just boom, they're my friend.
Another Jiminy Glick question, though, about the same subject was, do you think urinal dividers take the fun out of urinals?
My first week I'm there in the Senate, we have the Sotomayor hearings.
Right.
And it gets to me, I'm last. I'm the most junior. I've been there a week or less. And she says that she became prosecutor because she watched Perry Mason. And I said, why'd you become a prosecutor from a show where the prosecutor lost every case? And she said, well, actually, he lost one case. And then I went, okay, well, I got a lot of questions here. That was just my intro to her. Yeah. And then at the end, I had a 30-minute questioning period, and I had like a minute and a half left over at the end. I couldn't develop something else. So I went, okay, just curiously, what was the case that Perry Mason lost? And she said, I don't know. Everyone had been looking for me to be funny, and I was avoiding it. But when she said, I don't know, and I said, didn't the White House prepare you? And it gets this big laugh, and then suddenly I get all this press. Al Franken has to be funny. Okay, so now we go to, this is over, our questioning of her later, and we go into the hearing, our normal judiciary hearing room, and we're getting an FBI clearance. They started doing since Clarence Thomas thing happened. You have to have this like official meeting where we sit down to hear anything bad about the person, because they knew something bad about Clarence Thomas happened because they had that meeting. Right. So now they just perfunctory have this meeting. So we go in the meeting with nothing to do. We have to just sit there for 15 minutes with nothing to do. Tom Coburn from Oklahoma goes like, actually, Perry Mason lost 2 cases. And now it's all over the internet. People are talking about Perry Mason. And Jeff Sessions goes, I like Dragnet. And then Cornyn says, I really like Highway Patrol. And then I say, I worked with Broderick Crawford. And they all go, what? and Broderick Crawford had hosted the show.
I remember.
Yeah. And they went, what was he like? And well, he was drunk all week.
Did you tell them that? You told them that?
Yeah. Yeah. But now I had won their respect, finally. I had won my Senate seat in one of the narrowest victories ever. I was the 60th Democrat at the time, so we could end up passing the ACA. But the thing that made them go, oh, you're a real person worthy of respect, was that I worked with Broderick Crawford.
Well, I do think, though, that the most open we are to that kind of celebrity thing is when you're 12.
Yes.
Yeah. So when he was 12, he was watching Highway Patrol, and it's like, I remember meeting Tony Curtis. This would be late 80s, and it was at Jamie Lee Curtis's house, and that's her father. And I'd met by that time I was in the movies, and I met a lot of celebrities, famous people. But when he walked in, it was like, whoa, oh my God, is that a famous face to me? Because when I was 12, my favorite film was Some Like It Hot,
Yeah, so there are people who you idolized or that made a huge impact on you when you were a kid.
Oh, absolutely.
That's different than a contemporary that you respect.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I knew Mike Nichols for 20 years, but I kept pinching myself if I was at a dinner with him that I actually knew him. Because when I was 12, Nichols and May, I thought they were the geniuses. And then you listen to that Broadway album, and it could have been recorded yesterday, as far as the character work and how funny it is.
Yeah, it is amazing, that work. And that's what you were watching when you were 12 instead of Soupy Sales or something like that.
Right. I was listening to Nichols and May and Jerry Lewis and Jonathan Winters.
Of course.
And Laurel and Hardy and Abbott and Costello. Those are my favorites.
Love Laurel and Hardy. Were you a Bob and Ray fan?
No, I think they would be on the radio, like in our kitchen.
I was reminded of Slow Talkers of America last week during the hearings. Which is a brilliant piece, and I'd recommend anyone to go to YouTube and find that. You've been watching the hearings, right?
Oh, every one of them. Yes, absolutely.
And has anything shocked you?
No, I mean, there's nothing from my perspective that I've heard that surprised me at all. You know, I believe that Trump is capable of saying anything. I do believe that he sold Pence down the river and called him a wimp. I believe that completely. It just fits a pattern.
Yeah, that's the thing is like, this has exceeded my expectations. I think they've done a great job.
Yes, I think they've done a brilliant job. And I don't think that you can ever change the people that are cultish to him. But I know many, many Republican families that I raised my kids with in LA. And I think they would watch this and be quite affected and start to, even if they had been in that camp of Trump at one point, would really have to say, I can't.
If they watch it. But polling shows that people are already moving.
People are watching it. It's 20 million people or something.
Yeah. But, you know, it's which 20 million people? And the MAGA people that you would want to be persuaded are deliberately not watching.
Yeah, but I don't think they'll ever be swayed. But there are
they won't.
There are middle people.
Yes, and that's exactly. But you know, to me, and you and I have talked about just we need to prosecute this guy, right?
Yes, I think it sends a very, very harmful message to America if someone who clearly should be prosecuted isn't. Then you can't no longer say that no man is above the law. Clearly, Donald Trump would be above the law because he's broken it. And they're proven that he's broken it endlessly. So, I mean, how do you feel like if you're the common man saying, well, wait a second, I don't get the rules?
And my question is people are saying like, well, we need more. What more do you need than this? He led a conspiracy to overturn a democratic election.
I know.
And I mean, there's no question of that.
And in my mind, I mean, I'm, Canadian American, but has it ever happened before in the history?
No. No.
I mean, I know that, Nixon was not pristine, but.
Oh, but this is child play compared to.
Absolutely correct.
And if you think about it, they talked about Gore confirming or certifying, right? When he was vice president, certifying Bush.
Right.
Nixon certified Kennedy.
Yes, absolutely.
Think about that.
I know.
And that was a very disputed election because of Illinois and Texas.
Absolutely.
To me, the only defense is insanity. And, he's not insane. He's just the worst person in the world.
I don't think he's well. The ones that are really shameful to me are the ones who know better, who don't have any kind of psychological illness like Trump does, like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and Lindsey Graham. These are the ones that deeply in the core of their soul know how wrong Trump and Trumpism and what he stands for and what he's done to democracy. They know that to be true. But I guess they didn't want to work at Blockbuster.
We're back with Martin Short. Let's talk about Only Murders in the Building.
All right.
It's you, Steve, and Selena. One of my favorite things in the show is that you guys are old and she's young. And there was a line in it that I think Steve says to you, which is, they hate it when you call them.
Yes, we were trying to communicate with her. We were trying to decide, do we phone her? And Steve said something like, phone calls seem to upset them for some reason. Oh, I remember one time, my brother Michael was very funny. He's won many, many, many Emmys for SCTV, from SCTV to Schitt's Creek.
Wow.
But his son and my son were both the same age, and they were just both on their phones texting, not speaking, and between them was a cheeseburger. And Mike maintained that Henry was texting his cousin, so are you going to finish that? verbally ask. No, it's a different thing. And also there's a premise running a joke in the show of Steve always signing his texts. And Selena saying, you don't have to do that.
Right.
Yeah. You would sign a text, sincerely, Charles Hayden Savage. You know.
Now, in the thing, you both are in show business.
Yes.
You are director, right? You're a director.
I was a theater director, and Steve was an actor. You know, it's always fascinating, those people that are, Steve is always fascinated about this. You know, someone who was like immensely popular for about 7 years and then hasn't worked for 25.
Yeah, and that's his character.
Yeah, right.
And, of course, Steve created this with someone else, right?
You know what? The Steve story is this, that he was at a party at Sandy Gallon's, the great manager. And sitting on the couch were 3 older actors. And Sandy said to Steve, you know, you should write a series for them. And Steve, who is obsessed with true crime, watches all those shows endlessly. So he thought, well, that could be an interesting thing. They live in one building. And he thought about it, and that was it. That was like 10 years ago. And then he had a lunch with Dan Fogelman, who's a tremendous, brilliant writer, director. And Dan asked him if he had an idea. And Steve said, well, I do have this idea. And then within 8 months, we were in production.
And you both play guys who are in show business because that's all you know.
Basically, it's true.
Yeah.
I accept where your truth has led us.
So this season is, well,
you know,
we'll find out.
It ended, season 1 ended when we were arrested for killing the woman who ran the building and Bunny. And so that's how we start off season 2.
Oh, okay.
And, you know, Shirley MacLaine is in it. Amy Schumer.
Whoa. Tina Fey, of course, is still
back. Nathan Lane is back.
Oh, Nathan, yeah.
Andrea Martin.
Oh, cool. And this is on Hulu.
This is
everyone.
on Hulu.
It's on Hulu.
Which is owned by ABC.
Is it?
Yes. It's ABC.
You know, I fought a lot of the mergers when I was in the Senate.
Well, you lost because they all were.
I know. Now, you're still touring with Steve, but not during the summer, I take it.
No, we just did 3 shows this weekend.
I love the show. I've seen it twice, and I loved it the first time. First time I saw it was in Phoenix.
That's right.
I loved it. And then the second time I saw it was in D.C.
That's right.
Maybe over a year later, I think. And It was even better.
Oh, good.
Which it should be after you're doing it for a year and a half.
You think it was worse.
Steve is probably one of the most disciplined comedians.
Well, he's the most creative human being I've ever experienced in my life, you know. And he's always thinking and writing and changing. And then if it doesn't work, he just laughs it off, you know. But I remember seeing Steve. It would be 1980, maybe. I didn't know him because I wouldn't know him for 5 years, meet him for 5 years. But he was presenting, I think, Best Comedy Album at the Grammys. And he came out with full tails, but boxer underwear and no pants. And he didn't acknowledge it. And he just started reading the nominations. And then a man ran out, little bald guy with pants on a hanger. And Steve just looked at him and said, well, it's about time. And then he put on the pants and then continued reading. And I thought, well, that's like Mozart.
Yes. You know, it's interesting how huge he was during that period, right?
I remember seeing him at the amphitheater in L.A. at the height of Steve Martin, 1978.
Right.
But Danny and John were opening for him as the Blues Brothers. That's right. How big that night.
I saw him at Avery Fisher Hall in that tour, I think same tour. And the first line was, I've got to stop playing these toilets. That was Wild and Crazy Guy. And that character, the character he played in his stand-up.
Yeah.
Is about as different from him.
Oh, absolutely.
as anyone could be. And I think that there's a tension, which is he's this huge rock star of comedy. And people think he's kind of that guy.
Right.
And so I think that was there, in knowing Steve as well as you do, was there that tension? Did that affect him in any way?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I know when I think of Steve, I think of him kind of like a wild and crazy guy. I mean, he's always doing jokes. He's always with me. if he's very comfortable with you, then he's just as funny as you think
Right.
he should be, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, Steve is always right. He has a new joke that he just put in the other night. Said, ladies and gentlemen, I turned 77 this summer. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so dyslexic. I meant to say 77. And it's, to me, that's a pure Steve Martin joke.
Yes, that's a beautiful joke.
Yeah.
I have a bifurcated podcast, which is I do a lot of public policy and then I do comedians.
Yes, exactly. And nothing in between.
Sort of that. Yeah. There's hardly any funny
What about would you interview Kim Kardashian?
I just couldn't. I couldn't interview her. I don't know anything about her.
I had dinner once with Kim Kardashian in 2011, and she was really charming and sweet and smart.
Doesn't surprise me in the least.
Right.
Didn't she had a reality show or something, right? Okay. Yeah, I'm probably showing my ignorance, but and a lot of that time I was during time in the Senate, I really was
focused on that,
paying a lot of attention to popular culture.
Exactly.
So I have a little bit of a gap there.
I understand.
Yeah, and I was taking what I did pretty seriously, as do you.
Yes,
you do. And well, thank you. This has been lovely.
Well, lovely, Al. Now, do you edit, or is this just raw?
We edit.
Thank God.
Yes. Oh my God. Some of the stuff I know the stuff I'll edit out to make me look better. That's what we mainly focus on.
Well, no kidding.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening. That beautiful music is by Leo Kottke, the great Leo Kottke. I want to thank Peter Ogburn for producing this podcast. We'll talk again next week.